Okay, I'm pleased to welcome everyone at this final webinar from IPSM this year, the webinar that is held by IPSM. My name is Marina Trepova, and I am co-founder of this company, and I am the CEO of IPSM. Overall, so I am, let us say, the trainer that is actually active in the field. So today I would like to say that we have the final meeting that we would like to use for discussing this meeting, so to talk about the procurements and procurement professionals, just for us to understand what should we wait for the next year and what are we going to be facing next year. This year, we have already had multiple meetings and we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions with our British colleagues. And if you have visited our webinars and participated in those, you might recall that there were very interesting meetings. We would like to continue this good tradition and we would like to close this year with the final meetings with our British colleagues, the colleagues from the UK. And today we're going to have a very unusual meeting, an unusual webinar, because for some part of their life, the people who are going to be here today, they have been connected to Ukraine, and you will know why, even though that they have for quite a long period of time have already been living and working in the UK. I think that they will tell it a little bit about that themselves later on, about what is their connection to Ukraine, but I would like to introduce you with our today's agenda. We're going to have two panels today, and the first panel is going to be presented by Pavels, Antonovs and Olena Slobodianyk. At the very first panel, we're going to be talking to our colleagues from UK and from Ukraine, and we're going to have a second panel, and we're going to have the second panel with Vasyl Bychynskyy and Novetsky. And we also going to have a co-moderator for our today's session. So please welcome Victoria Kravchenko. She's my colleague. She is the co-founder of IPSM. She's the marketing boss and guru in our team. So whatever you will see in our team, all of the marketing activities have been made with Victoria's help. And because of Victoria, and she's going to be one of our co-moderators for today's meeting. I would like to remind you as well that you can send us questions with any language that is going to be comfortable for you. It would be good if it will be the three working languages that we operate, English, Ukrainian, or Russian, because we're not really good in the other languages. We're not that proficient. So please send us your questions and we will be able for any kind of your discussions. So we're definitely going to be discussing the topics that are going to be important for you. You have sent us some questions during the registration. We're really grateful for those questions. And we're going to have some questions and details prepared for you beforehand. We're going to be using your questions as well. And I would like to remind you that this webinar is recorded, so you will definitely receive the link to rewatch this webinar after the webinar will end. So we are starting our first panel, and we have Pavels and Olena for the very first panel, and I'm going to introduce you with these two colleagues of mine who I highly respect, and I'm really grateful to all of our panelists for joining us today and for finding the time in this very harsh time for the procurement professionals, especially in the end of the year. So please welcome Olena. She's a professional and working with multiple companies. We have met with her for many years ago already. We have the same values on the procurements and the procurement professionals in Ukraine, and the multiple things Olena has supported us, and I do hope that Olena will continue supporting us as well. Olena has her experience of working at the head of procurement for Bayer in Ukraine, and right now Olena is working in yet another sector. She works with NGOs, with the non-governmental organizations, which is basically the organization that exists with the donors' support. And I do believe that Olena is going to tell us a little bit more about her experience, how she feels working in these sectors as well. Pavels has experience of working in different countries, and that is very interesting. And I do believe that Pavels is going to tell us a little bit about that, about the difference of experiences you've had. As far as I remember, you work in Lithuania. Am I right? In Lithuania? Because I might be mistaken.
Very close, it's neighbor country, Latvia.
Latvia, I'm sorry, Latvia. I've worked in Latvia, and right now Pavels is working in UK, and he has started his work, he started his work as the head of procurement, and he's now working in a very fast developing chain of the retail food shops. And you're going to tell us about your experience. You're going to tell us about your experience, how you have gotten from the head of procurement to actually the CEO of this retail chain. And that's a very good example for all of us, I guess, because people usually say that from the chief of procurement, it is really hard to get to the CEO position. So I think it would be very interesting for us to learn it from your experience. So if I may, I would like to start with the first question to both of you, Pavels and Olena. When you're going to be answering that question, please refer to your experience more. How can you describe the year 2021? What was really challenging for you? Was it complicated for you? What were the challenges that you faced this year? Yes, who would like to start? Please, Olena, let us start with you. I've started with your introduction, so please. Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's not just an important moment for me, but it's actually the opportunity for me to draw some conclusions from my activities and for this year, and also to participate in a very interesting and useful event for all of the sector. And if I may, I will continue in Russian, if you don't mind, because I'm working in a multicultural structure where we're using, most of the time we're using English, and rarely we'll use Russian, and even rarer we use Ukrainian. So just for me to be faster in answering the questions, I'm going to switch to the language that I practice in my everyday work. But if you will need interpretation, so we have interpretation with the help of the organizers, you might receive the interpretation. Yes, you can switch to English, and you can go to English if you would like to do that. Yes, but if we have discussed it beforehand, we know that we'll have more people who are going to be more fluent in Ukrainian and Russian. So that is why I will try to cover more audience. So I would like to apply to the audience that speaks Russian or Ukrainian. So just to start with, I would like to start with a little bit explaining what I am. So I have experience of more than 11 years in procurement. For 8, I have been working in the international pharmaceutical company Bayer, as Marina has mentioned. So I was the head of the procurement department for the last 4 years, and trying to drive some parallels with the current situation in the world. I just wanted to say that at this moment that I was working was the crisis of 2014, and there was a lot of challenges for us. Challenges for us is something that we are used to. So starting from 2018, I have been working as a national officer of procurement in the national non-governmental organization. So I cannot emphasize its title in the public sector, in the public events. So what I can speak about our procurement structure, we have around 13 people. We've divided into teams. One of those teams is managed by me. My team is focusing on the administrative procurement and providing the services for communication, providing the environmental security, transport all over Ukraine, and procuring the events and travels. We are non-commercial organizations. We do not have the direct procurements, as a main priority for us is about transparency and following the procurement policies. So, for example, we have 4 audits every year. The kind of strict rules, especially when we are speaking about following all of the procedures, they are the ones that are very important during the pandemic cases, because it was the biggest challenge for all of us. And getting back closer to the main topic of our discussion about what were the challenges in 2021. Among the most clear challenges in 2021, of course, we have seen the decrease of the capacities for the different kind of productions, with the delay of the supply for different products and spare parts. So the very same that postponed deliveries, the prolonged delivery time, that were also has influenced the pricing, and there was also the fluctuation of the currency rate. And for us as a procurers, that has all turned out to challenge as for the refusal to participate in tenders for the tender participants. So they were not able to provide us the guarantee for supply. Or on the other hand, the people have decided to participate in tenders, but they have also in their offers, they did all of the risk recalculations and the higher prices, which was also had some consequences for all of us. Moreover, we cannot forget and should not forget the need for the new insurance as well. So we have this COVID-related measures introduced as well. And after the lockdowns, and we had additional opportunity for the protection of the transportation for the people, for providing the medical treatment, or the prophylactic, or also prevention of the diseases. We know for the procurers to be ready to work with a new category of procurement, you need some time, and no one had this time, not the professionals in procurement, know the people, know the vendors that they have worked with. So in order to work on the newly created orders and the newly created demand, it was needed for us to replace the resources, but not only from the other categories in the framework of the procurement departments, but we were needed to use some people and capacities for the other functions as well. So there has been some of the measures as well, the adaptive measures, in some way they have also caused the quality decrease for all of the categories. Wherever we are inviting the experts and wherever we have been working with additional experts, and that has also it influences, again, both the suppliers and the procurers as well. And as we understand, one of the functions of the procurer professionals is to provide the control for all of the supply chain that we have. All of that and has been just the part of the difficulties that we've had. And I do believe that all of our other speakers and our audience, they can add up to this list with their own examples. And I do believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg. How to overcome those challenges we have got in depth, and we have seen that there is a limit of resources as well. So Marina, do I have a limit in time, or do I have this opportunity to speak about the resources and to cover that for 5 minutes more, or do we have to start the discussion? Yes, we have 5 minutes more. Yes, of course. Okay, so what was the main output for us? So basically the challenges, the barriers, they're definitely the outtakes out of the standard processes. And to regulate this kind of challenges, you need additional resources, at least resources as human hours. So we need to have additional people and additional working time. So we have to take down the fires that have been seen due to our delays and due to the no challenges, and they have to create the measures to prevent the same situation from happening in the future. Understanding the overall scope of the pandemic, we have understood that this kind of deviations were seen in all of the sectors. In the past, we really liked to have this average pressure, average tension for the procurement professionals due to the amount and the cost of the orders. Even right now, if we've had the very same scope of transactions, would be the same. The time of processing every transaction is higher. So basically, due to the pandemic, because of the uncertainty that we have, the coefficient of the difficulty of processing of regular tasks has grown. Just to give an explanation, for example, if we will have, I don't know, a 20 million euro order, that has to be 20 million euro procurement, that would be out of these 4 different queries for procurement. In the past, we've needed around for like 10 people to process this order and like, for like 4,000 and 2 million. So right now, because that kind of approach has presupposed a simple quotient, right now, our main conclusion is to increase this quotient again. So, like our calculation was for that to make it 1.3. And with this kind of approach, we don't have 10 people more. We will have 13 people that are needed for us to process this kind of order. So this understanding, it comes in time and it requires a little more analytics, and it requires additional calculations for each specific situation. But if you would have the very same claims that we have, I would like to offer you to actually give those resources, give those calculations to the responsible executives, that there is the need for additional people because of the workload, and for in order for them to be able to understand that the financial losses because of the delays of the supply and the deviations in the supply chain, they're going to be huge, and it's much easier to hire more people to be able to process the needed amount of transactions and procurements. And we understand that there are some additional uncertainties for the long-term planning, but basically we can at least cover some temporary project with additional resources allocation. Yes, so I think the main thank you, Olena, but I think the main thing here is that first of all you have to calculate, you have to assess your needs, and then you will have to provide it as the really argumented position to give the understanding that the procurer professionals, there are different today, and the profile of our professionals is changing, and I would like to talk to you about that slightly later. Thank you very much for your intro. I would like to say that, I've slightly mixed the participants of our panel discussion. Unfortunately, I know that Stephen is limited in time and we have to let him go 6 o'clock EU time. So I'm sorry, Pavels, can I switch you to the second panel? Because, I'm all mixed up. Saying thank you for understanding. So, slightly end of the year, all mixed up. So, okay, Stephen or Stefan, as I've just known quite recently. So, Stephen, it's a pleasure for me to welcome you here. So, if you can give us a couple of words about your experience, about your way in the career, throughout the career, in what way you are connected to Ukraine. And I just would like to give a couple of words. If you have been in our previous conference on procurement that we've had with the Procurers Association in 2014, and I'm really grateful for Steve coming to us at that point of time and for him sharing his great experience by that time. Thank you very much, Steve. So the mic is yours. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Moreno. I am really grateful for having this opportunity. How am I connected? My parents, they come from Ukraine, and I was born in 1974 in London, and I've lived most of my life here. I have spent half a year in Ukraine in year 2002, but basically, and with the procurement, with this profession, the best profession that you can reach. I'm starting from 1999. So I've started working from the early 20th century and evolutionary way. I started working there because mostly I worked in the state institution, in the public institution, on the contract managers. I'm sorry that maybe sometimes in official terms I know more about English terms. And then later on, when I'm going to be speaking English, because I think it will be uh, much easier for me to work in those terms, and I think that it will be much easier for people to understand what I mean by that. But yes, with this year, starting from 2020, that has been an unbelievable challenges because the UK is quite a sustainable country overall, and with all of my colleagues in the country, they have been always considering the currency rates. Well, the pound sterling is I've never considered that because, when I was making any kind of comparative tenders, I've always been focusing mostly on the quality. I've been always focused on the other values, on the other attributes about the product or the service that is procured. And we have never considered the currency rates. The currency rate was of a very secondary importance for all of us before that. So it's just that in a couple of last years that I've started to address this issue as well. And I have started to have this practical understanding of what does that mean actually. And we also have those challenges from all of the sides because we have the Brexit coming out on one side. And I would like to say that maybe for the last 2 years, I think that have been quite challenging for me due to many things. Okay, so maybe I can I then clarify it? So additionally to what has happened before and the lockdowns and all the pandemic, you also are influenced by the Brexit that has influenced the whole supply chain. How can you then maybe describe that? How can you describe in what way the procurements have changed due to Brexit and the pandemic? What are the procurement facing right now in the public procurement especially? What are the challenges for public procurement in the UK? Well, we can speak about the two aspects here. Well, for around like 2 months ago, we have seen this main problem with the gas station. So we had a lot of problems with gas and petrol delivery. But it turned out that's not that much about Brexit. It's more about the fiscal changes. We had this provision, the IF 35, that was about paying less taxes. And in order to pay less taxes, then each of the employees, they don't work as an employee for the specific company. They are as a sole entrepreneur. They work as a sole entrepreneurs, and a lot of people, they've left their position as the drivers, as the truck drivers, due to this factor from the fiscal code, from the fiscal legislation, even though the Brexit had its say in this situation, but it was a secondary say, a minor say. But speaking about the procurement challenges, well, if we will consider that the Brexit referendum took place in year 2012. So, for 5 years already, for 5 years already have passed. So that was 2016, and we still do not have the new code. We still do not have the new rules for the British public procurement. So, we're still continuing the discussion. We're still working with the stakeholder engagement and customer feedback. That's still on this stage, still on this level. But I do believe that we've had this referendum of getting outside of the European Union. That was an additional condition for us to create our own game rules, but still we don't have it yet. So our country has left the European Union both de facto and de jure, but I think it's still in the European Union rules overall. And so basically, there has to be some rules already, but at your point of view, so right now you're being basically you're going with what you believe is the best in the framework of the legislation. Well, the European Union legislation has been also synchronized. We have this European Union procurement directives, and they have been as well transposed into the UK procurement legislation. So basically, they go in it. They've had the procurement, and they have been transferred to the regulations as well. So okay, so basically, so a lot of you might know that we have these European Union directives that have been the compulsory, obligatory to follow in the public procurement for European Union and for the UK as well as part of the European Union. And right now, the colleagues from UK, they're still going with those directives that are still implemented into the UK regulations as well. Okay, Stephen, another question for you. So the problem that Olena has mentioned, are those challenges are really relevant for you as well? That the overall profile of the procurer's work have changed. So right now we have a more workload for procurement, and you can speak about the public procurement as well. Do you feel that or no? Well, in our case, we've had some problems with resources itself. So there is a huge demand, and I would say there is a huge demand for professionals. And speaking about the delivery, so the laptops, that has been an important situation. So you have to be very proactive to work with your suppliers and to have even this, demand forecast in order to be able to understand, to plan it all in advance and to order it all in advance. So that is why, for example, Cisco, they've made the data switchers for the networks. They've said that starting from the 1st November of this year, they are raising their prices up by almost by 70% for those switchers as well. So at the end of October, we had to procure it all because, on the other hand, they will have to have some approvals as well. The private sector, they're more dynamic, they're more flexible than the public sector is. So the public sector, in not all of our parts, but in most of the parts, they're not really flexible, especially in procurement. So even if you understand what you have to do as fast as possible to provide all of the permissions for that, it's impossible almost. No one is really cares about the prices about like that in public sector. So it's also the factor of culture. In this case, unfortunately, in the public sector, how to put it the right way. So,
Мгм.
not always what is needed to be done can be done in a fastest pace. Yes, there are some questions, and I'm going to ask those questions to you, Stephen, and then I will ask Olena to comment it as well. So we have the questions from our audience. What was good about procurement this year, in your point of view? Well, I do believe that this year, that was, that was just in time. And I think everyone knows what just in time was. So I think that the just in time has been postponed for the books of history. And, there's resilience have come up into the stage. So we're now speaking about the resilience of the procurement, and the resilience of the supply chain is number one in our attention, because, the just in time principle was a very risky model for the inventory managing, and we was always dominating and based on pricing. And how can you receive always the lower price for something that was important as well, but it doesn't have to be the prevailing factor. So there is the price and there is the real cost, the real cost of it. From what I have seen as well as another trend, and what I have also spoken about before, that we see the overall increase of the prestige of the status of the procurement professionals. Do you believe that? Do you see that in UK, that it's more prestigious profession right now? Yes, I would say yes. I would say that there is a positive tendency overall, and it's going to be continued. It's going to continue. Well, basically, yes. So it will continue for the next 5 years, I believe. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Olena, what do you think about that? What do you think about the increase of the prestigiousness of the supply and procurement professionals? Well, I agree. I agree with that as well. Because how it all like before, and we had this collaboration in the framework of the agreements that have already been signed and already have been closed. And if there were no difficulties, then the stakeholders, they collaborated with the suppliers directly. But this year, we have seen more and more challenges rising. So that is why we have been asked to help it more frequently than before. And yes, it's also increase the overall prestigiousness of our profession. But for the procurement professionals, all of those conditions there were, of course, really favorable for improving their own skills as well, because we know that when you're stepping out of your comfort zone and when you are forced to analyze the new risks and analyze the new sectors, it's something that makes us more stronger, make us more competent and more capable. And if it's possible, I would like to give a very brief comment about Stephen, what Stephen said, that we have collaborated as well, and we had a brief period with a company that is based in UK, and we have collaborated with them. But there was that we had some workshops, which was what the main reason for our collaboration with them. And understanding that due to the lockdown period, this kind of companies that were unfortunately lowering their expenses, it has also influenced their administrative work and administrative expenses. We had a lot of questions about how the documents can be made, and which is as well important for us as for the organization that works in the uh, productivity sector, and that, so prioritizing procedures to save the costs, that was very interesting moment for me. So we've tried to also do that, to take those resources with the help of procurement. So if on the side of the suppliers we've had these cuts, they've already been made, especially in the training sector, when there was also something that we had to substitute with our own resources. So, okay, so that it means about the contract management issues was more relevant overall throughout year 2021. So it's not just about, I don't know, for checking it overall, but to making it a very high quality contract management process overall. Okay, and I have questions to both of you again, to Stephen and to you, Olena. So can you please tell us, because our registered participants, they also want to know what are your forecasts, whether we'll see the further development of the logistics crisis. We know that there are some problems with the deliveries. We know that the cost of the delivery has dramatically increased. We know that we have seen the cost increasing almost by 10 when we're speaking about delivery by sea. And we cannot guarantee the terms of delivery because it's all connected. When we see the shortage, then the shortage is the shortage in logistics, then the shortage of drivers. There are a lot of shortages that we have seen in the recent year. What have you faced? And whether you believe it's going to be even more continued next year. So who would like to start first, please? Okay, ladies first. Okay, Olena. Well, I think that I'm, I can't answer this question because we have discussed it before, and as I've said it in my comments, because our everyday activities and everyday challenges, they have been more. So we've had most this kind of everyday challenges have been mostly seen by mostly commercial organizations, because as a non-commercial organization we do not face that, so we didn't feel those challenges coming, because in our case as a non-commercial organization, those challenges that you have mentioned, they were not really that acute for us. So maybe we have one of our panel people who would be able to comment it with more expertise on those issues. Well, yes, I think that at the second panel, and Pavels will be able to comment about this issue as well, because that's the shortage of deliveries. That is a very acute question for us. But okay, Stephen, have you faced that in your public contracts with this problem? And do you believe that the situation is going to getting even worse? So, because there are different forecasts. Well, I do believe, yes, we can experience the worsening of the situation, but there's always the bright side to that as well. So if, for example, during 90s and 80s, we had a lot of offshoring, we had the manufacturings, we have been based offshore just because it was cheaper and just because it given you more savings in costs. It was just better to switch all of your manufacturing capacities to the east, for example. So right now we have the different trend. So we have the onshore trend. So we're getting back to or putting your production where your clients are. And also speaking from the geopolitical point of view, because speaking about the semiconductors crisis that we've had in Taiwan, in Japan, in the Far East, that is the main geography location for the production capacities for the semiconductors. But what I have seen that is going to be a high priority factor right now, especially in the uh, national security politics, to have those capacities of semiconductors as well in your country borders, or to have the semiconductors producers on the regional level. So this is something that's going to increase as a trend as well. As Olena has said, that yes, that's something that's making us stronger, making us more competent in how to work with those issues. And it's not about the prices, basically that's the key thing, because it's not about the pricing, it's about the competitiveness, yes, but it doesn't mean that it has to be the lowest price straight away, because as the people say, there is a difference between the prices and the costs, because we're not that rich to buy cheap things, as people say. Yes, that's a UK saying, and that's a Ukrainian saying as well. Okay, good. Thank you very much. And what is the best way to import the products in order to avoid the change of pricing? And what will the deliveries, air or sea? Well, from my side, I think that you have to provide the evaluation for each specific case and to just understand what is going to be important for you. And we have to also use this local capacities, and you have to include the local markets, global markets, and to diversify all of the risks that you have. I think that you might agree with me, dear colleagues. Okay, dear colleagues, thank you very much. I have a question on how the profession is going to be changing. I'm going to ask this question to you, and I'm going to have this question to our next colleagues at the next panel. So what are your forecasts? How do you believe the profession will change in year 2022 or maybe up to year 2030? Because you have those interesting experiences. You have worked in the public procurement, and Olena has worked in the commercial procurement sector. What do you think is the main trend in the development of the main competences for the profession? Olena, maybe let's start with you. Well, how the trends of at least last 3-5 years have shown that the profession is now changing, mostly due to digitalization. And I do remember those times when the procurement function didn't even have the constant competence on the support of the procurement system. So right now, I do believe that it has to be one of the first skills that you have to have, know how to work in the e-systems. And of course, understanding and building on my experience, I understand as well that the function is changing all the time, but there can be some cycles of changes can be seen as well. The changes, they either tending to centralization or decentralization. So when we have this centralizing period in procurement, the professionals, they see some specific competences that they need. They have to provide it, the sourcing and purchasing. So the sourcing is also being broader, covering more and more categories with this, and they're analyzing the markets in a deeper way, in a better way, trying to forecast the future. But in the same time, the very same workload increases for all of the professionals, and we understand right now that at the very peak, we have the need for the decentralization of the processes. On average, we have seen the cycles every 7 years, because in all of those approaches, there are the pros and cons, and in the long-term period and in the long-term evaluation, those pluses, those pros and cons, they can be accumulated, and they require the changes to happen as well. So yes, there is a constant process of adaptation depending on your priorities, and every specific organization has to consider what are the priorities for them. But what is constant, what would you see, that the support system support functions and the processing and automating the simpler tasks that we can actually use to grow the further own professionals later on. The analytical skills are there as well. It have to be combined with a system support function because we are basing all of our analysis in the practical work of the system. Yes, Marina, you're muted. Can I have a question as well for Olena? Olena, can I ask you about the soft skills? In your opinion, what should we consider? What should those people who are only starting their career in procurement, what should they consider? For people who just start the career, I would actually ask them to get used to changes because basically, to have this flexibility in their skills because in life and in procurement directly, it is really hard to it's really hard to go without the basic skills of negotiation. And the analytical skills, they are important as well, and they are needed as well at each of those stages for each of those functions. So I do believe this is going to be the main basis for the procurement professionals. This is something that has no limits to all of the other professions as well. Thank you. So negotiations. Everyone needs negotiation skills and everyone needs the analytical skills as well to be able to work with information. Good. So I think like jumping a little bit farther, I would like to add up as well that this kind of profession as the business intelligence professionals, I do believe that they're going to be very important and very needed in procurement further on. Right now, not a lot of people consider that, but I am sure that in time it's going to be a very popular profession among the procurement professionals as well. Yes, the very same flexibility and agility, it's not a very standard skill at this very point, but I do know that the international institutions and companies, they also evaluate the flexibility. This it also been considered as a KPI already because we have to be real about some things. The very same agility and flexibility and readiness to agility and flexibility is something that give us the opportunity to improve ourselves. I'm sorry, I will switch to Russian time of the time because unfortunately, I don't have a lot of Ukrainian language in practice. So, because, well, it's going to be really good for you to get used to those changes, and the change management has to be included as well. For every employee, you have to have the course on change management, especially in those situations that we faced in recent times. It will help us to overcome those challenges when they appear. So we know that there are some challenges appearing. We're already expecting them to come in order to adapt to those challenges in the process and to become better. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Stephen, what would you say from your side, from your point of view? What would you emphasize? What are the competences and the skills that the procurement professionals need in the years to come? Well, I do believe, first of all, the opportunity to have the long-term perspective strategies. So, to have this strategic thinking scope. So, not just, you bought something, you've delivered it, and they're in place. Because, this year, for example, it is obligatory 10% in inauguration criteria is to have the social value. So you have to have this social value there. And during the tender competition, your company should show what is your impact to the local economy and what are your positive things going on. So basically, it might be on the recycling or the recycling of the materials. So what it was it that you do? For example, furniture. If you are supplying furniture, so you have to think about that. What you're going to do at the end of its life cycle. So provide this the full life cost account. So it's not just about the prices, but the cost of your product has to be included fully. Yes, I will do a little bit of the interpretation for the interpreters to be able to understand as well what it's mean here. It's like the life cycle cost for all of the products and service, considering the recycle of the product possible and including those impact that it will have for environment or for the community that this product or service works. And I do believe that Stephen would agree that I will add up to that, that we have to add up the mitigation of the negative impact for environment as well into the final price. Did I understand it the right way? Did I also interpret it in the right way? Okay, good. So that's very interesting because we're just starting to think about that and including all of those moments into our pricing as well. The social factor is not yet assessed in Ukraine, but I hope, Olena, do you assess it? Well, yes, we've got up to this point that we've understood that for those organizations where I have been working, that has been already integrated at the level of the procedures as well. But it's really hard to reassess it for the TCO and the overall for the full cost, life cycle cost. So we understand it sometimes that sometimes it causes additional costs for this kind of production because they're going to be used high quality materials and so on and so forth. So only with this criteria, we can try to balance it. But I would like to say that in practice, it's not yet integrated as an obligatory factor. But again, we have an open conversation about that, so I'm sure that we have a lot of chances to actually use this criteria in the future. Okay, thank you very much. And Stepan, the question that the audience have had and have given us already. So what can we advise to those professionals who are starting to work in procurement? What should they emphasize? Just to first of all, to understand that, your learning doesn't end with your institution. So, so in year 2021, I've had my SIPS accreditation, but I have understood that you have to be trained all the time, constantly. The reality around us is constantly changing. So you have to learn constantly. You have to change yourself all the time as well. Otherwise, without this improvement, you will not have the good career as well. You have to update your training. You have to update your practice as well. And you have to understand that it's a multifaceted game. It's not just simple calculations that you do, or assessments that you do. So basically, I always have said that our profession, our sector has a huge impact, has huge social impact, because the way the company behave, the way that we treat the companies when making this contract, what are those contracts, how the contract is being as well fulfilled, it has the tremendous experience, as has a tremendous impact for not just the environment and the people around us. So I do hope that if we're going to be more strategic in our mindset, if we're going to have the strategic vision working in tactical environments, that we have to have not just the deadline or the profit margins, so that we would not stick that badly to those factors that are there in all of the procurements for us. We have to have it clearer understanding that there is a lot of responsibility that we have on the social level. You have to have this, I would say, moral contracts with yourself, that you have to have the lifetime learning in different types of this learning. And for us to be able to understand that we're not just commercial target people, so our profession is much broader than that. Okay, thank you. So I will switch to English right now and I will read the question, and I would like to ask Stephen, first of all, for you to answer this question, if you may.
Okay, the question, which demand forecasting method can be the best one to use during the unprecedented time? So can you share your experience, please, and how you implement it in your public procurement contracts?
So in these unprecedented times, so it's basically, I think a lot of it is what I've said already. It's good supplier management. So for example, if you're going out to tender, you would be well advised to engage with the marketplace, to conduct early market engagement. so that suppliers are best prepared, because we shouldn't forget that bidding for work is actually a costly affair for companies. For example, I'm doing, it's a £70 million electronic patient records procurement in 2022. So we will be approaching something like 20 suppliers who make up the bulk of that marketplace. And we'll be having conversations with them in a very transparent manner to ensure that they do not waste their bid costs, because bidding costs could be in the order of £500,000. So we want to avoid, we want to make sure we've got the right suppliers bidding for the right contracts. So I think you've got to be proactive with your supplier base.
I'm sorry, Stephen, sorry, can you change the channel for interpretation? There is no interpretation. I'm so sorry, because the guy, yeah, thank you.
Добре, тепер мені говорить по-українськи.
So should I speak Ukrainian now? Okay, so okay, because people have asked the question in English.
No, you ask in English, but please use the English channel, because the guys didn't hear everything. Proceed with English and the English channel. Thank you.
Right. So can you hear me now normally?
Yeah, in English channel.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, just to say early supplier market engagement, so that you basically ensure that you have the right suppliers bidding, particularly for large scale procurements where bidding costs are significant, and just recognizing that bidders' time, they have their opportunity costs as well. So as a kind of conscious procurer, you should be taking that into account. Also, I think what was mentioned earlier on around supplier management, we've got to be far more proactive in managing suppliers and in managing contracts, and have less of a transactional approach. And I think that will ensure that you get added value. So for example, when placing orders, maybe don't adhere to sort of ad hoc type approaches, but look at things in a more methodical and forward planning type way. And I think that will be very beneficial both for the supplier and for your end customers and stakeholders. Okay.
Добре, дякую дуже.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer, Stephen. If you're going to be switching into Ukrainian, please switch the channel to Ukrainian channel again for all of us not to mixed in between the languages. Olena, would you like to add up something to that?
Yeah, if I may add, and I fully share the comments of Steve, but what's more, I would like to underline that the unpredictable times are not fully unpredictable. So we are still certain, but till a certain level, and therefore I would suggest not to forget about the risk analysis and the traditional concepts of probability and impact. And at the stage of the forecasting of the demand, we can evaluate those risks, and depending on the outcome, we can realize where to focus our attention on and where to involve the suppliers to define those levels of probabilities and impact to make it even better.
Дуже дякую.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answers and for your comments. We have one more question, and I do hope that we will still have some time to answer this question in our first part. This question was that about the supplies from China. And if you would like to add up something about the supplies, Olena, I think you don't work with China suppliers. Okay, so I will pass this floor to Stephen. So even more question to Pavels later on. But Stephen, if you would like to add up something to that, how to be effective in managing the supplies from China? speaking about all of the unpredictable situation or the possible logistics problem, trade wars that we have seen happening between US and China, and Brexit as well, all of that together, what are your thoughts about managing your supplies with China? Well, I do believe that the pricing factor used to be the main attractiveness about the Chinese economy and about the Chinese producers. And as it has already been said, due to the geopolitical factors, everything has changed right now. So, at the official level, it is now being declared that China is almost an enemy to the Western world. So, that was this as well, the agreement between Australia, United States, and UK. So, I would work in the procurement strategy. And if we've had these in this procurement strategy, at the first place, we had the Chinese company. I would try to be very skeptical about that. So, I have some people who I know in Kharkiv, and he said that was a tender for the map on the Kharkiv underground in like 2 years ago, and the company from China has won. And basically, in Poltava region, there was the Kharkiv carry edge constructing plant. And so basically, you can actually deliver this carriages for the underground straight away from a neighboring region, and you can actually have the secured supply chain, and you have the good jobs and good delivery. I think that they have added up in their evaluation criteria these factors, and if they did it, they would have a completely different result when actually contracting the supplier. So I think that you have to consider that as well. You have to consider this real geopolitical factors as well. The world is changing. Yes, we have to work on our public procurement. And we understand that, yes, we have to work on that too. And those, non-pricing criteria has to be considered as well. And we have to keep on working on evaluating those. And I do have hopes that in this sector we will improve, because unfortunately the price is still plays the key role for us. Like, yes, that was a very strange situation. Why not procure the carriages from the neighboring region? Yes, I'm really sorry. Unfortunately, I have to run. It's 4 o'clock, but I'm definitely going to be listening the recorded version of our discussion. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for being the part of this conversation. Thank you very much for being part of this community. Thank you. Thank you as well. Have all the best, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and see you soon. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the best, all the good health. Goodbye. Goodbye. Yes, goodbye. Okay, so we will continue with our second panel, and everyone is asking, will we have it all recorded? Yes, we have the meeting recorded, and everyone who got registered, who's here today, we will send you the links for the recording. And I would like to comment upon what the people have said in the comments, that right now the social factor has already been included as the criteria in the tender documentation as well, and in the tender bids, and it's very relevant to certain aspects as well. And the issue of the environmental responsibility and ESG is very important right now. My colleagues have mentioned it out. Thank you very much for mentioning that as well. That's very cool if you do that. We do support you greatly, because that's one of the topics that is not that popular in Ukraine, but we are developing that as well, because we are the socially responsible company on our own part, and we are trying to get the biggest impact to that. Thank you. Olena, would you like to add up something before we switch to our next panel? Yes, thank you very much, Moreno. But basically, I do believe that we have started with that discussion with the most important topic that I wanted to discuss as well. But it will be the greatest pleasure for me to listen to all of our next participants, the second panel. And I'm really sure that this is going to inspire me and all of our audience for the good conclusions. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're switching to the parts two. We have Vasyl and we have Pavels with us. Thank you very much for your understanding. I'm sorry for mixing up the order of our participants at the beginning, but we all starting up all again. We have Pavels and we have Vasyl. Pavels is presenting the network that is built in UK and they have the plans to work all over the world. And Vasyl is the representative of the IT sector, the IT company SoftServe, the company that has been developed in the fastest pace. And Vasyl is going to tell us more about what are they doing, how they transform their procurements, and the company grows every year, shows the growth of more than 40%, if I'm not mistaken, if I haven't give you any kind of commercial secrets. Okay, I would like to pass the floor to Pavels. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience? And let us start talking about your year 2021. Speaking about procurement, was it challenging for you? How can you describe it? Please, Pavels.
Yes, hello, hi everyone. My name is Pavels Antonovs, and thank you for having me. It's very grateful to be here today. Small bits about me. Currently, I'm General Managing Director for one of the hard retail discount chains in the world. I haven't seen many competitors of us, and I'm very delighted to develop UK market. So the second field that I'm involved is operations and the waste and recycling. I'm very impressed that Stephen mentioned those elements, which are very important. If we are breaking down the whole sum of experience, I would say it's 8 years in operations and around 6 years in sales and procurement, and all experience in the UK. In the UK, I'm around 12 years. Actively working, and I've been assisting such factories as Kharkiv tile plant. In 2017, I've been dealing with sunflower oil from Ukraine as well, and there are many projects somehow related to Ukraine, and Ukraine is my grandmother's and my mother's land, basically, and thank you once again for having me here. So going further to the question that you have asked about what challenges been in 2021. The challenges that we experienced gave us as very strong analytical tools, very strong diversification of the procurement strategy that we are currently implementing. And this is giving us an essence of breathe in the UK market. As we are starting in the UK, this is a very tough market to start business, as you can imagine. And for us, it's a matter of choosing the right strategy. And we started it only because the COVID happened. It's sad to say, but when the COVID stepped into the doors from the supply chain crisis, we managed to get through, to break through the market. So this is an element of effective tool to every single business who want to start. There is a small gap. If you utilize this effectively, you can break through these doors in economically highly developed market. That's one. The second, what I've heard throughout the previous speakers, and it's a very correct word, demand. And we will break down our course of negotiation today, explaining the demand and what's the beauty about this word. But first thing, what I wanted to explain is just in a few bits about how we understand what is supply chain crisis. And I have a small graduation of elements, like small bricks to describe what is chain crisis. So the first of all, it's a complicated global supply networks and logistics processes that have been strained at many different points, such as a lack of components or raw materials, shortages, long productions, and many other elements contained in this field. So if we are talking about what causing the crisis as itself, we have to take in aspect three elements. One, it's COVID-related disruption to supply. The second is a COVID-related distortion to demand. And the third one is a high utilization, what was effectively described with the previous speakers. So with these three elements, if we'll break down through, we'll build our strategy on. First is how we effectively can use and utilize our supply channels. As a procurement team, what we are doing, what we have to do. The second element, we have implemented our risk analysis, what was mentioned by Olena. And I think this is one of key elements that brought us a nice strategy for the whole procurement team, seeing not only products, but understanding the crisis, what is happening between the supply channels. And the third, which is absolutely, it's a high utilization. High utilization can bring a so-called bow effect. And we have analyzed this bow effect. With the high utilization, we understand that with the wrong estimation, we can have this bow effect that absolutely negatively impacting the longevity of the business. And my question would be to every business as a clarification: do you have a strong and long and short-term goals for your business for next 2022? So I hope this explains the whole summary, explain what challenges we went through, and it's non-stopping. We're still in the process of adoption and adaptivity. Thank you.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. And I do believe that, I always say that, in the times of turbulence and the time of this uncertainness, it's the best time for the changes to happen. So basically, if you would like to show your value, this is the best time for you to do that. This is the best time when you can show it and the best time when you can use it. That is why there was this question that I've posed to our previous panelists, and whether the treatment of the procurement professionals has changed and the prestige has changed in the last 2 years, because this is what I see. What you have said is slightly indirectly hinting to that as well. So thank you very much for that. Vasyl, can you give us a couple of words about yourself, and can you tell us as well what do you see in procurement, how this year has passed for you? What is the transformational year for you and your company overall? Yes, good day. Good evening already, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I am impressed by the level of discussion. We had a lot of interesting topics that have been raised, and lots of interesting topics. And I understand that we are moving in the right direction in our company. I work in the SoftServe company, as Marina has already said, and our company is working on developing multiple services for our clients in the sector of developing the digital solutions and the IT technologies. We are working in different industries, for medicine, for financial sectors, for energy. My role in the company is mostly about promoting the best procurement practices and the resource management practices, so starting from the utilization and starting from the procurement moment that has been mentioned already. At this very moment, I am considering this 2 last years, year 2020, 2021, in a very positive key. As you have said, and as Steve has said, that the next 5 years to come, the procurement function is going to be getting even more popular. It's going to be developed further on. And I think that we are now has entered the decade of the real popularity of this profession. And this is mostly due to the idea that we're now providing the new value for the businesses. We're providing the new value for our clients. As it has been already said, then it's about managing the risks. It's about protecting the reputation of the company, protecting the businesses. In our current world, in our environment, we have spoken about already the ecological aspects and environmental aspects of the supply chain. That's all about the procurement organizations. We are now those gatekeepers in the companies that are protecting and providing that's a value for the company. We're protecting the company as well. In this period, for a couple of last years, and those challenges that we have had, they have shown us that the just-in-time principle has already outdated it. We have this just in case principle right now. So right now we're working on the long-term plans and our short-term plans. We've been constantly updating it, working on the risks, analyzing the situation. And this is something that what we are asking from our employees as well. So if you will consider the last 2 years and the year overall, we have already understood that we're living in a highly volatile environment. And, we have one situation right now, then we have a different situation. Who would have thought that the channel of Suez would be closed and how it will be impacting the people who are working in our company and how it would be impacting that, for example, our workers would not be able to have their headset delivered. So we had never thought that this channel is going to be blocked, and it causes some additional unpredictativeness as well. And having this unpredictable world and all of this complexity of those connections, as Pavels has said, has been tremendous between the supply, procurement, consumption. It has all created this kind of environment when the procurement teams, as has been said before as well, that they're not just increasing their workload. We have to live and we have to understand, we have to be ready for the constant change. Like you have said, we have been working on this transformation for the last 5 years, and I'm really proud for my team because we have built the team that is ready for the transformation to happen. It's not our people are not scared of this transformation. The first thing that we needed to say that, that the changes are not scary, and the change management is helping us a lot in this way. Speaking on how we can work with those challenges that exist, and in my point of view, the most important thing is working with our teams. I think the change that is going to be happening in the procurement sector is there will be the role of the procurement ambassador. The person that works with businesses, that understand the business functions, the function that consumes certain resources that have to be procured. And it will give us the opportunity to use more proactive approach because the procurement is not going to be working proactively on itself. There's going to be fires. Still, I do believe that the teams have to know how to work with both ways, proactive and responsive. So that being closer to the business function will be able to have more time to resolve those problems in procurement that the organization set in front of us. The procurement ambassadors who understand the business functions, who understand it, they can give it already at the demand building when we're just not analyzing the demand, when we just build the demand. Maybe there will be the alternative resolutions that can be used that will help us to diversify the supply chain and trying to mitigate some certain risks of the workload. So for me, the main focus at this very moment is the readiness to change, the getting closer to work with the businesses. I think those are the two main focuses that we are now concentrated on. Those are the things that we are working on as well. There are important moments that we haven't mentioned yet, as when we are talking about working with suppliers. What has helped us through the year and what is continuing helping us as well is to build up the trust relationship between our suppliers and us. And in this case, we're trying to build very transparent relations with our strategic partners. For sure, we are now having the partners who bring us the biggest value, who understand our businesses, and we're getting through this turbulence all together. In this case, where the demand is higher than the offer, we have to go through these times together. I think that this is one of the most important pains for us because, we use the electronics, and I think this is critically important for us. And, the computers and the equipment supply is the critically important question for us. And the chip supply is very important for us. And we have been living it for a year already. And I think we can only get through this situation together. So only building the long trust relationship with different producers, working together on developing our plans, we will be able to reach the good results. Yes, by the way, we have one question. What is the perspective of the development what is the perspectives of the crisis for the semiconductors in 2022? I've also mentioned that, and we've discussed this topic together. So what are your evaluations for our audience? What will change with the semiconductors for the next year? Well, in my point, we haven't yet overcome this crisis of the semiconductors. But I'm trying to track what is now being discussed in our CEO by CEO of the Intel, or what Tim Cook says from the Apple. What they're saying that till autumn 2022, we're still about to experience the problems with that. Yes, a lot of companies, they have already declared like billion worth investments to increase the product capacity, to increase the capacities overall for the chips and the semiconductors production. But on the other hand, there is a big pressure from the governments of different countries, because, like, for example, the usage of the e-cars, and we're speaking about the demand as well. I believe that right now we don't have, we don't have a lot of delays, then the demand will grow. So okay, up till 2023 the situation will be just the same, and then let's hope that it will change. Yes, well, but there's going to be something innovative and unexpected, because the partners, that's important to say that there is innovation is an important role for all of us. So the partners that will be able to find a good solution, not just finding the way to deliver some things to you, but to offer the alternative, to provide you with what you needed to cover your business needs. Maybe we're not going to be using that. The laptops maybe will be using the VR headsets for that. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Before we switch to our next questions, I would like to remind our audience to have their questions typed in to our chat and ask all of the questions that you would like to do. Pavels, would like to switch to you and would like to continue the topic that I've asked before for Stephen and for Olena as well, on how Brexit has influenced and how the trade wars has influenced, how your collaboration with China has changed. Can you describe it a little bit from your point of view of how does your company work with that, how it influenced you, and how did you cope with that?
The Brexit, very strong word in economical terms to England. 100% it's not effectively, and more like negatively affecting the UK, the business as itself, but at the same time is giving new opportunities, as I mentioned before. Here is a practical example. As soon as Brexit started, the meat industry in a certain period, when there was a labor outforce to Europe, was increased on 11%. That's one element. How this can be in a highly economical country. And the element, small businesses that has automation, they want the medium-sized businesses immediately. And we will speak today about automation as one element of procurement. How many businesses are thinking about the automation nowadays? It can be a procurement automated as well. So hopefully we will answer on those questions as well. So Brexit as itself gave us, as for the retail business, a huge challenge. China, diverse of shipment from China, diverse of legislation from China, gave a negative impact for the whole industry. And as I mentioned in my first speech, it's a part of supply chain crisis. What elements we are using in order to predict, in order to be effective in our business? It's supply diversification. Under this topic, we break down all existing elements what we have in our business and do a risk. 100% we make points in our supply chain when we risk. By saying supply diversification, what I mean about that? There are two elements. One, we quadruple our existing channels, not even double or triple, we quadruple. We source extra mile from our procurement team. And as you mentioned, Yelena was saying about the extra hours that should be involved. When you have a proper automation, and nowadays you will be impressed when you will set up task for analytical department to search alternative tools that can optimize your procurement team. Because procurement, it's not only buying and selling. Procurement, it's a life cycle of the product from manufacturing point to sale point with resale point. This is a life cycle of operational, analytical, buying and selling. And I'll be honest with you, what happened with us, I've learned in 6 months our procurement departments to sell, not to buy, to sell. Thank you.
Забула включити мікрофон.
I forgot to turn my mic. Pavels, I would like to clarify that. You have said that you were taught your procurers to sell. So do you mean in direct procurement or indirect procurement? Because I know that you have a separate function as well. And not so many companies have this direct and indirect departments divided.
Yes, our direct procurement department, because we made, I don't want to explain the hierarchy because we're going to draw too far. But basically, we have highlighted important fields that are lump sum, like Pareto method, 80%. And those 20 important, we are selling to them. We are selling us. We are selling the longevity of our operation. We fight for them. We're not coming to element of simply sourcing. We are selling the business in order to replace, because we understand that empty shelf in our stock, it's not about us and our strategy about fighting the price. It's about the collaboration within the teams. And now why supplier has to choose us in critical time when there is a critical thing for everyone's happening nowadays. We have to fight for this critical moment to strive the channel. And what we do, we implement an element of sale, or we call it element of sale or element of care. Thank you. I hope this explains.
Yes, that explains a bit, because we all know how we will building this collaboration between the chains and suppliers. It's very complex, and we know that there's a lot of negotiation moments and building the overall relationship between the retail networks and the suppliers. But it's a pleasure for me to hear that you're building this partnership relations with your suppliers in the commercial procurement, the direct procurements, and for the product retail chains. And that is really cool thing to do, and a very interesting thing to do as well, because of course all of those teams, it is the main goal for all of the teams in the company is to make the company effective and to make it more operationally sustainable, if I may say it like this. Pavels, another question for you. So what do you think about the logistics crisis as well? So do you think it will get worse, or do you think that we are able to get out of the situation that we have? What do you think about the logistics crisis?
It's a very good question. Thank you, Marina, for asking this one. I would like to get you practice what's actually happening, because we can hear lots of stories, but practically people don't see what's happening. And in order to break down all elements, we will start from the vessel that is staying out of the sea. The first element, when the vessel is not moving, it's the most expensive thing in the world. It's all about the high utilization, demand and high utilization. There are two elements. When vessel is staying, it's already something happening. Let's think about, if vessel is staying, he can't get access to port. One, we can sort the access to port, so the more vessels is coming. Let's say we can build more cranes in order to operate from with containers. Is this sorting the problem? No, it's not. And the reason, because there is no place in the port. Let's say we will build more place in the port and get more containers. Is this sorting? Exactly no. And the reason is because we'll not have a special chassis trucks to sort these containers. And when we'll get to chassis trucks, we'll get a labor problem, When we get the labor problem, we'll get the high utilization, and it's non-stopping element of one bringing, it's like a bottleneck. Every position is bottleneck. So answering your question, logistic point, and the funny thing is I mentioned about the bow effect. I would like to explain what does that mean. This is what happened to me as well. It happened 6 months ago with the wrong estimation and analytics were made. We made a wrong supply demand that phase that we took a lot in the crisis element in order to satisfy 6 months period. And after 6 months, the scenario changed tremendously. So basically, we stopped, I would say, planning and logistic involved in that period as well. Our long goals are more optimized to short-term goals. And we are more looking or just-in-time manufacture or lead manufacturing processes. So answering your question, Marina, yes, I do think the disorder, disruption in logistics gonna be more and more happening. There is no strict line when it's gonna be sorted, and it is only because of demand and high utilization problem. Thank you.
Дякую, дуже цікаво.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very interesting. And I do agree to what you've said, that we have to basically accept to what Olena has said. We have to accept that situation of constant change. We have to learn how to live in the situation of the constant change and how to be effective under the situation of constant change. Because, you know, as I always say, that we have to be sure, sometimes we cannot be able to be sure about the terms, and we have to plan in advance. And of course, we're facing those challenges when we have the limited resources on one side, when we have the limited resources of the warehouse and other. But on the other point of view, we do need to have some guaranteed capacities, some guaranteed supplies, so that we would see the situation when we have the empty shelves. In your case and in Vasyl's situation, when for us not to have the situation when the new teams that are coming there, you're not able to provide them with the new equipment, and you cannot provide the satisfaction for the clients. Vasyl, can you add up to that? Well, yes, I would add a little bit, and Marina has already mentioned that we have an extraordinary growth of our company from year to year, 30 or even 40%. As far as we mostly sell in the software, and we also work with people, and people need resources for their work. And what we have facing that in times of in these volatile times, in the times of crisis, we should not only provide them the opportunity to protect the resources they have, but also to increase it by 30–40% according to the company's growth, which is a strange and complex situation overall. And in this case, when I am coming to businesses, I'm always saying that, you know, money will not help us, because you can give us whatever you want, but if we're not going to be planning it in the right way, it will not help us. So sometimes we understand that the long-term plans are not working all the time. The demand model is changing. The contracts that have been signed, there might be changing. Some people are coming earlier to this job. Some people are leaving. So that's all that's happening. And that's a regular level of the planning that we have. So we're planning all the time with a constant update of the data. So data, automation as well. That's an important moment. As we have seen it in a couple of previous years, that's something that's going to be important on the way as well. So automation, analytics, and understanding your strategical processes. We need to make the decisions fast. We need to make this decision fast, sometimes even if it's a dramatically different decision that we made before. So we have to face the situations. Yes, alternatives, diversification of the decisions and solutions that we've offered. We should think about it as well. If we have one product, we have to consider whether we will be able to provide this product with an alternative delivery from a different country of the world, from a different part of the world even. Okay, so thank you very much. And continuing this topic that you have raised up, Vasyl, can you give us 5 main competences or 5 main directions for the development of the procurement that you see right now, or what has to be done and has to be known by the procurement professionals in the next 5 years? Because everyone is asking about that. Everybody wants to know what should they do in order to be effective now. So can you name these 5 skills? And then Pavels, I would like to ask you to answer the same question. Five skills? I know just one. Communication. Communication is gold. Negotiation is gold. So we are the people of negotiations. We are having negotiations with our stakeholders and with our suppliers as well. We are that bridge that provides this. We are providing the bridge between the businesses and the suppliers. So communication, 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 and communication. This is the soft skill that is needed. Yes, because in order to do that, you have to know how to communicate in the fast pace. And yes, you have to be prepared to that. So you have to have this preparation. So you need to have this, you have to constantly learn as well. So basically, I know that in order to be ready, you have to analyze. In order to succeed, you also have to know how to pursue people. And you also have to learn how to communicate with different people, with different parties, and where to know their interest as well. All of the other things I think you can learn, those are the standard practical operational things that you can learn in process. Okay, thank you. Pavels, would you like to add up to those skills?
Yes, I had a huge procurement rolling element in last year, more than 60 people run through. And I've developed the educational program just to understand the element of effectiveness. The one thing that I want to mention, it's a strong cultural company culture. This is the key element for the procurement. If you don't have a culture within the structure, I don't think this is anywhere effective. The second, I absolutely agree with Vasyl. Every single procurement manager with the structure of procurement manager has to be the negotiation skill, culture of negotiation should be on one of the best demands. You have to know your customer. One question is whoever ever is doing psychological portrait for the buyer. I think no one. We have adopted this element 6 months ago. Our increase in procurement sales agreement went to 37% immediately, just because we understand our end consumer. We understand who is selling to us, simply because of that. The second element, whoever tried to assist to make a psychological portrait negotiation model scheme marking with how your opponent is feeling today. Do we understand that he has a bad behavior? Should we call him today? Maybe let's call tomorrow. Simple questions, understanding. This is a psychological one, a bit of psychology, negotiation, operations. Third is operations. In order to negotiate, you have to have skills. Operations, sales, and buy, these are the skills for negotiation. Every procurement manager has to understand where product is coming from. Do we know the price breakdown of our product? Do we know the case of our communication? Are we educating? How are we educating? You see, I have many questions, Marina. I have dozens of questions to go through. But those questions are related to a business culture of what we are giving. And the fifth element, it's a nice cup of coffee for free for every procurement manager, so they can feel a kind of independency and care within the system. Thank you.
Насправді ви прямо...
Well, basically, that's what you've said was basically unbelievable nice. It was so good to hear, because everything you've said, that is something that we're trying to deliver to the people that are participating in our community, that are visiting our webinars, visiting our lectures, meetings, workshops, and what we're trying to deliver to our clients. Because what you've said is matters, negotiations, and knowing how can you work with your with your clients, knowing how to work with your suppliers, building the effective and mutually beneficial relationship, being a little bit of psychologist as well. So, the one thing that I can advise our audience just, to listen to our speakers' advice, because our speakers are getting from their own experience to share what works with them. Even, with these figures that Pavels have said, that they have had an increase of their agreements closed and the contracts have been more effective after they have started to use the psychological portrait of their suppliers as well. So,
Marina, can I add one thing? Can I add one thing? Just to give you a summary of our specific of our agreements. Our agreements in the UK are only on sell or return basis. That's the one, which is impossible for a startup. And we managed to get a portfolio of 1.3 billion trusted suppliers only within the UK on sell or return business. Thank you.
Так, я зрозуміла.
Yes, I've got it, and that is absolutely unbelievable, and especially understanding the specifics. So yes, dear friends, I would like to remind you that you have the time for questions for our speakers. We have the time for questions right now. Victoria, do you have any questions for our speakers? Well, yes, I would like to have a question, and the question would be connected to what we should expect from the future. Next year, we're going to continue this tradition of our monthly webinars, and one of the first webinars that we would like to do and we would like to launch will have this working title, the biggest mistakes in working with your suppliers. Maybe you will give us one mistake of what you should not do with your suppliers, or if you will do that, that will not end up good. So let's maybe we'll also engage Olena with us. Olena, maybe you will have also this one mistake that you would like to voice out. Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you. Of what we should not do. I would at this stage, I will switch to Russian if you will allow me. You know what? I would offer you not to trust your suppliers blindly. Yes, and you have to turn to Ukrainian channel. Okay, yes. I would advise not to make this mistake, not to trust your suppliers blindly, but not because we have any kind of suspicion towards our suppliers. Is that our world is changing constantly, and at some stages our suppliers, they might be slightly relaxed in some situation, and there might miss or skip certain phases that require additional attention and additional control. So there might be some mistakes due to other reasons. Maybe in the supplier side, there might be the change of management or the change of the person who worked with you. And only when you have additional control points, we will be able to manage those changes as well. So we have to consider that. We're speaking about the strategic suppliers, first of all, and speaking about the middle agreements in the overall categories. So this is the first thing that I believe. So, we have to be aware with working with our suppliers, if I may sum it up like this. So I might maybe recall something more, because we had a lot of interesting questions rising up and we're continuing thinking about those issues. So as you speak, I might recall some more points. Yes, Olena, I just wanted to have just one point from each one of you. Vasyl, what do you think? What is one thing that you should not do with your suppliers? It's a good question, because you're always thinking of what we should do, but not what we should not do with our suppliers. Well, thank you for this question. I do believe that because right now we're speaking about this risks management and the risk management in supplies as well. I would put it this way. So if, for example, if at certain contracts we have included the delegations of risks for the suppliers, so right now you should not do that. the situation is changing and the rules of the game are changing as well. So yes, we should share certain risks with our suppliers, but not 100% share. So we should not actually rest all of our hopes for the delegation of the risks. So thank you. So you mean that now we clearly understand that we're on the same boat together? Yes, yes, on the same boat together. Okay, that's very important for me because, you know, I'm the person who used to work from both sides. Okay, so Pavels, what would be your advice? What not to do with the suppliers?
It's very interesting, but it's already written in our 105 golden rules. And this is a rule that you don't let your suppliers ask you a question. I hope this explains what does that mean. That means you are working for a supplier in order to sustain and run your lines effectively. When the supplier asks you questions, that means there's something happening. So we do everything in order to be one step forward of our supplier. And this is one of the questions, what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't ask triangulate questions to your supplier as well. You don't overload your supplier. You don't over-strategize your supplier. And there are two words that I would like to mention and ask the questions: performance or trust. In the UK, the first time when I realized that performance is a second, the trust is a key element. If you don't trust your supplier, you don't perform. In the UK, you perform only when you trust your supplier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's yet another layer that you raised up to this issue. Okay, I have another question as well, and I think, Vasyl, that would be mostly fitting to you, because I've noted it out, and you've said that the procurement professionals is about the protecting your reputation, protecting the businesses, protecting the income. So one of the part of the work. Yes, and creating the new value, creating the new values. Yes, yes, and you know, I have seen that, and I have talked to multiple business owners, and you know, not all of them understand right now that the procurement professionals, maybe they don't have a departments already or procurement developed, but they sometimes do not understand that the procurement professionals can help increase income and protect the income and the profitability of organization. What would you recommend to your colleagues who would like to provide, to show their value to their companies, and how can they actually argument, how can they persuade the company leaders of the value of the procurement department in Ukrainian reality? You know, I think that you cannot do that with just one meeting of the management or the executives of your company. I think that it might not be just one conversation on the go. I think you can only show it with your own activity, with your own work. Only step by step, you can show it. You can show it to your company, you can show the value of it. So you can build up this understanding and this feeling of what is the value that you deliver. The good cases, the good examples when we've done it, there was the very beginning of the pandemic, you know, this very strict lockdown, year 2020, but we have to have the procurements done. This year, our clients are asking us, like, how did you got the laptops? Because yes, we have considered the things in advance and we have built our supplies for our team properly. So we have had the supplies discussed with our partners. We have built up the demand cycle. Every week we had to work with the department, with finance, with the production departments, for us to be able to understand is anything changes. That has been a long and very efficient work. And one example, when the clients are addressing us with the official channels and they said, how did you do that? It gives a clear understanding that we're working in a good way. So because, you know, like it all has to be done step by step. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleagues. Olena, Pavels, if you would like to add up something to that as well, we would be really grateful. At how can we actually persuade the company of the value of the procurement function? Yes, if I, yes, please. Yeah, yes, can you just once again repeat the question, maybe? Or yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm switching in between the channels. So yes, if we are saying that the procurement professionals are the one that are helping to protect the company, their income and the reputation, so in what way the head of procurement department can deliver those values to the CEO, to the owners of the company? How can you show that value to your company? Not about the cost savings, but about providing the new values. Well, I would continue what Vasyl has said. Before, the procurement professional was an additional resource for the communication between the stakeholders, the clients, and the suppliers. But right now, we're not only speaking about these additional resources, we not treat our procurement professionals as additional resources. The suppliers, they feel the risks even earlier than the procurement professionals. They feel the risks of the critical moment of supply. So our main task for us is to reach this level of trust between our suppliers so that they would know whom they can address, who they can turn to. How can we stimulate them to this comments? Can't you hear me, or can you hear me well? Well, yeah, we can hear you well in Ukrainian channel, and I can hear you well in Ukrainian channel as well. So can you hear me right now? Have anything changed right now? Now, Olena, if you have chosen the Ukrainian channel, then yes, so basically, if we're going to reach this level of trust with our suppliers, then the next goal is going to be for us to transform the very same information to our stakeholders who are influencing the decision making, because our task is not to get ourselves prepared, but to manage the expectations as well. And it's already been said like that all the time. So to manage the expectation for our internal clients and to work on the further steps together with them. Okay, Pavels, would you like to add up something to that?
Absolutely, yes. So once again, we are stepping to a side of what we spoke about. And I think by bringing a bit intense vision for every head of buying and colleagues as well about the business functionality, because I have a clear comparison what's in CIS countries head of buying means and what is in Eastern European head of buying. Head of buying in Eastern Europe is involved in processes, in business processes. It's not only the element of KPI of the sales, it's also analytical research and partially involved operations within the business. So it's a key strategic player. And the department as itself, it's a huge value. 80% of sustainability of every retail business, it's a purchasing element and longevity of it. So in my point of view, I'm not very clear on this element, but this is my point of view. By bringing clear cultural aspect within the company and giving a bit more tools and a vision for the head of buyings and their colleagues, will bring a release element of careness and not limiting on effective tools, implementation effective tools, but giving access to those and control them so they're not running away, because we know how people's mind are working. When we have a possibility to impact on business tools, we got a certain value, our value, a bit hierarchy, going up. So we have to control this. But for me, it's very easy to control, because I started as a head of buying last year, and I went to a chief procurement officer after 6 months, and now I'm CEO of the company that is growing 39% since 2017. And fingers crossed, everything will be the same for the next 5 years, because the retail, especially discounter era, started 2 years ago. Thank you.
Успіхів вам.
All the best, all the successes for all of you, I guess. And then, okay, that was all questions from my side. Yes, thank you, Victoria, from your questions and your answers. Now we had broadened our list of questions, but those were very important things for us to cover for the Ukrainian market and to have the clearer understanding of what we should consider, how we should be developing as well, because we had a lot of questions that are coming on that. We're still waiting for more of your questions to come. While you're going to be writing those questions in chat, I would like to give you a couple of important announcements. By the end of this year, we have worked a lot and we have worked on providing the more values for the supply chain in Ukrainian markets. What are we doing in order to do that, except for the webinars that we conduct? First of all, please do join our Telegram channel, our channel in Telegram, and you know the channel is titled the Procurement News, and you can use it Zakupivli News in Ukrainian and English. So there's a lot of interesting things happening there. And another important message from our side is that finally we have decided to turn into NGO and then NGO from the professionals in procurement. We have thoughts about this idea for quite a long period of time. We have discussed it a lot. The main question for us was about resources. Finally, we have found that resources needed. Right now, we are on the stage of registering this NGO, this public association, and we would like to ask you to join our association. We do not want to call it association. I'll tell you how it's called. It is called the Ukrainian Union of the Procurement and Supply Chain Professionals. I do promise we'll have a lot of interesting things prepared for you, and you'll be able to network, which is something that you really like. We can be able to share your values, share the information. We're going to have a lot of interesting things planned for there. Our company will continue existing, and I would like to remind you that we have a broad spectrum for the overall consultant opportunities. We are providing mentoring sessions. We're providing mentoring sessions as well for the procurement professionals. We have the evaluations and audit of procurement, and we have a lot of things happening in the same time, and our organization will continue its development. Our NGO and our commercial organizations will be existing in the same time. Another news that we have is the news that I would like to ask Victoria to tell us as well. Yes, I do believe that maybe some of you have already heard, and I see some of our participants, they have been in our conference in 2014 and in 2019. We had an offline conferences. We had an online conference last year, and we do hope that in September 2022, we'll be able to have all of the people on offline. So that is why we've chosen the final week of September. We can't tell you the precise dates yet. We will definitely have the offline presentations. We will have discussions, and for sure we're going to have very interesting topics that we're about to discuss. So that is why I have been that tedious towards our speakers, because we're trying to get a little bit of what they can tell us during their real conference. Whether we're going to have the online broadcasting as well, we will tell you a little bit later. Right now, there are two opportunities that you can use. That's for all of the participants, not just the panelists that we have. We would like to ask you and invite you to help us. Right now, we're only studying the cases, only planning the content. So if you would like to join us, please do join. And we are trying to find what is going to be the best value for the participants of webinar, for our clients. If you will pay before the 31st of January, your participation will be with a really, really good price. So please address us, get registered. Our colleagues are going to turn back to you, and we'll be happy to see you there. And I would like to invite Pavels, Vasyl, Olena, and Stephen as well to participate in our conference in September. That will definitely be the final week of September. It will be either 27th, 28th, or 29th of September. Yes, we are now tied out to location. As soon as we have the location confirmed, we will release the date. And I would like to say Irina, that who is here in our the chats right now. So I think Irina, we would really like to see you at our conference. And Irina is from Lviv. So yes, we would really like to see you offline. We're always happy to see you. Okay, dear colleagues, if we don't have questions, so I would like to wrap up the session, because I'm really, really grateful for these meetings that we've had. I'm really grateful for our speakers for joining in us today, for answering our questions. We were really getting prepared to these meetings. We really wanted it to be the closing of the year 2021. We wanted to take a look into year 2022, and I'm really sure that these meetings that you are going to be joining us virtually and offline, we're going to be really productive for all of us. We were happy to see all of you. Thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much for posting those questions during registration. Thank you very much for your answers, dear panelists. And I would like to once again congratulate you with Christmas and New Year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to whatever calendar you'll stick into. Let there be peace and let there be health for all of your families and for your loved ones. All the best. If there are speakers you would like to add up something, please, the mic is yours. I can just offer the very same order. Maybe then I would also like to first of all, I would like to congratulate you on the good news and on creating this union and announcing the conferences. I will gladly participate in both of those occasions. So thank you very much for organizing this event. Thank you very much for the very professional moderation. Thank you very much for questions and comments for the audience. And thank you very much for those insights from my colleagues and panelists. And our today's discussion has definitely definitely inspires the next thoughts for us in developing. It also reminded me that we have the joint challenges for all of the sector. Overall, we have the same challenges. And what is also important for me, that if we will be a part of the union, it will give us the inspiration not to wait for the ready-made decisions, but to make your own impact in delivering and developing the economy and fighting challenges and crises, both in Ukraine and all over the world. Thank you. Thank you. And if I may, I would just like to thank Marina and Victoria. Thank you very much for this really good meetings, interesting discussions, very interesting points of view. We agree in multiple cases and we complement one another in our discussions. That was very interesting, and it will be very good for us to be meeting next year as well. The second thing that I wanted to say is to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Would like to wish you to use the opportunities that we now have fully. We're living in this time of good opportunities. Let's use them fully. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, in my last bit, I will be very short on my notice. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to meet you, all of you. It's the first session for me, but nevertheless, I would like to say the level of translation I've got, this is a very high class. So all translators is just 5 stars from me, and organizers as well. Thank you once again. Thank you for having me. It's very important for me. And the second is I would like to give everyone small gesture of being a bit positive at 2022. Every businessman, everyone who is just try to be positive, less stressful. That's portion of me. Meditation 5 minutes in the morning, I would say this helps a lot. And the third one, I wish you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Дякую дуже всім.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And in my behalf, wanted to thank our interpreters and the partners for the third year in a row. The Well Done Translation Agency has been working with us already. I think you've already learned about the procurement and the supply chain by now. So thank you very much for your language support as well. Victoria, maybe you would like to add up something to that? You know, I wish everyone to have really great holidays and to get relaxed, because I do believe that 2021 was even more eventful and stressful than year 2020, because we had to cover everything that happened to us in 2020. So I wish you the best of holidays. Spend it together with your friends and family or whatever you like it. So thank you very much for being a part of it. Hope to see you next year. Goodbye. Goodbye.